Okay, hello everybody. This is the APE2 Unit 1 video for week 2 of the fall 2022 semester. Because of the Chuseok holiday, we are using a video lesson for Unit 1. Okay, so it's a good idea to have your textbook in front of you if you have the book. If you have the ebook, maybe you could also have that open on your computer, because this video will be kind of interactive. And the best way to study with this video is to stop or pause the video and then complete the questions or the exercises in your book, and then start the video again, and you can check your answers as I tell you them. Okay, so let's start. And I will minimize my face for a little while. Yes, all right, so it's the Animals Unit 1 unit. Now, usually in the classroom, we would focus on speaking exercises. So the way that I teach this unit is only for the video. It is not how we will usually study in the classroom. Okay, right, we're going to start with page 18. Every unit has 2 listening sections, and we are not going to do both of the listening sections. We only do one of them. However, you must study the vocabulary for both listening 1 and listening 2. So, for example, in this unit, we will study the listening section for listening 2, but we're also going to just check the vocabulary on page 18, which is connected to listening 1. Okay, so the vocabulary, you can see there, this is the same as APE1. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 vocabulary words with their definitions. And we're going to fill in the blanks of the sentences below. So this is the first time that you can do a kind of interactive work with this video. Hopefully you have a book or the ebook, and you can open it to page 18. Okay, same as what's on the screen, obviously. And now what I want you to do is I want you to try to fill in the blanks with the correct vocabulary words. And then you can check the answers as I read them. Okay, so pause the video and try to put the words in the correct blank. And then when you are ready, start the video again and check your answers. Okay, so now I'm going to just read the sentences with the correct vocabulary words. Number 1, some people feel that using elephants in the circus is animal abuse. To be healthy, elephants need to live in the wild. Animal abuse. Those 2 words often go together. Animal abuse, and the word abuse is a noun, violent or unfair treatment of someone or something. Animal abuse. Number 2, this animal organization helps to protect animals which are in danger. It saves thousands of animals every year. To protect, verb, to keep safe from danger. Number 3, people who let animals go hungry are cruel. I don't understand how they can do that. Cruel. adjective, not kind. Number 4, some wild animals suffer in zoos. They live in small, uncomfortable cages and they don't have enough space to run. Suffer, to feel pain or unhappiness. Number 5, the conditions in this zoo are excellent. All of the animals have plenty of space and are treated very well. Conditions. Number 6, the biggest issue for many animal rights organizations is the use of animals in scientific experiments. Issue. Noun, a topic or problem which causes concern and discussion. Number 7, sharks continue to survive in the ocean despite the threat from humans. Okay, survive, to continue to live. And number 8, there are laws which protect the welfare of animals by making sure humans are punished for hurting them. Welfare. Okay, so that was the vocabulary section for listening 1. But like I said, we are not going to actually do listening 1. So I'm going to move to the next slide. That is connected to listening 1. So let's skip that. And we're going to page 22 and 23. Now you can see at the top left, language development. And that is a repeated description. Language development is in every unit. So basically it's grammar or it's vocabulary expansion. Every unit has language development. And we will look at this part, but I think we'll come back to this later. What I would like to do first is the listening to section. So again, we're going to check the vocabulary. And now we're on page 25. You can see, look, listening to. And if we just read what it says at the top there, you are going to listen to a presentation about human threats to polar bears. Do you remember the speaking task topic? We looked at it in week 1. The speaking task topic said, give a speech about a human threat to a protected species, protected animals. So this one is going to talk about polar bears. It's a good example of how to do that speech for unit 1. If you are going to choose that one for the speaking task, you cannot choose polar bears because it is in the book. Okay, you're going to listen to a presentation about human threats to polar bears. Before you listen, let's read the sentences and circle the best definition for the words. Again, there are 8. Right, so again, you could do this in an interactive way. You can pause the video and you can try to answer the questions yourself. You just have to choose A or B. What is the best definition of the word that is in green? Okay, so if you want to use this video in the most effective way, pause, do the questions, and restart and check the answers. Okay, and I will give you the answers after I take a sip of my beverage. And here we go. So number 1, climate change is causing ice in the oceans to melt. We need to find the definition of melt. So melt is A, to become liquid as a result of heating. All right, to melt. You melt your ice cube to become liquid. Number 2, some species of bat are in danger because farmers spray plants, their biggest food source, with dangerous chemicals. What is the definition of source? And the answer of that is B, where something comes from. The source is where something comes from. So let's give an example, shall we? What is the source of the milk that we drink? Well, the source is a cow. Cows are the source of our milk. I'm talking about the milk that we buy in the supermarket, everybody. Number 3, polar bears are endangered. If we don't do something to save them, they will probably disappear. The meaning of endangered is A, at risk of no longer existing. Okay, endangered animals. So their numbers are very low. Number 4, most people have only seen lions in a zoo or animal park and not in their own habitat in the African savanna. So what is the meaning of habitat? A, the natural environment of an animal or plant. Number 5, there are 2 species of elephants, Asian elephant and African elephant, or elephants. What is the meaning of species? That is B, a group of plants or animals which share similar features. Number 6, polar bears depend on sea ice for survival. What is the meaning of depend on? That is A, to need. Okay, I depend on. We depend on trees to provide oxygen. Depend on. Number 7, oil spills can damage the polar bear's environment and can even kill them. Damage is A, to hurt, and threat, the meaning of threat is A, the possibility of trouble, danger, or disaster. Right, now the vocabulary for each unit, it's important to study. It could be in the midterm test. Okay, so make sure that you understand the vocabulary. It's always good to translate it into Korean if you don't know what it means. Right, now we're going to move to the listening section, finally. So let's have a look at the top here. We get the pictures of the cute polar bears. There are some questions in part 3 and part 4, but we're not going to look at them. We're going to start with part 5. And again, this is an interactive part of the video. Okay, so we are going to listen to the audio file. I'm going to play it through my computer and you will hear it in the video. And what you need to do is you need to fill in this table. So have a look. 1, 2, 3, the human threats to polar bears. So number 1, they already did it, loss of sea ice habitat. But you need to fill in number 2 and number 3. And then on the right side, what people are doing to help polar bears. Again, you need to write the answers. If you want to use this video effectively, please try to write the answers. Okay, so what I will do is I will play the audio file and you can try to fill in those missing parts. And I will minimize my screen, my picture. Right, I'm going to have to just stop sharing the PPT for a moment because we want to use an audio file.
(1.2)
Hello, and thank you all for coming. I know that you're all busy students, and I appreciate that you're here today. So, what do you think of when you hear the words climate change? You probably think about warmer temperatures, floods, droughts, huge storms, and maybe polar bears. That's what I'm going to talk about today. The polar bear and the human threats to this beautiful, powerful, majestic animal. It's widely known that polar bears are now an endangered species. There are only about 26,000 polar bears in the world today, and it's believed that most of them will be gone by 2050 if nothing changes. There are several threats to polar bears. The biggest threat is the loss of sea ice habitat. Climate change damages the sea ice which polar bears depend on for survival. The disappearing ice has several negative effects. For example, polar bears have problems searching for seals, their main source of food. Polar bears need to stand on ice to hunt for seals. So when there isn't enough ice, the bears become hungry. A second threat is contact between humans and polar bears. When the sea ice melts, polar bears have to spend more time on land. When polar bears go near towns, people sometimes kill the bears to protect themselves. A third human threat to polar bears is industrial development, such as oil production and shipping. As the ice disappears, the ocean is growing. This means more oil production in the Arctic and an increased threat of oil spills. Contact with oil will kill polar bears, and the oil ships are also dangerous to polar bears. However, there is good news. It may not be too late to save the polar bear. Here's what people are already doing. First, Arctic communities are trying to reduce contact between humans and polar bears. More lights in public places, electric fences, and warning plans when bears enter towns all help to protect both polar bears and humans. Second, governments have made laws which limit the amount of oil production in the Arctic. And environmental groups are creating plans to make Arctic shipping safer. Third, people are trying to stop climate change. And you can too. To help save polar bears, you should use less electricity and petrol. And you could tell government leaders your opinion about climate change. It might also be a good idea to get involved with organizations which are working to save polar bears. So, to summarize, the main threat to polar bears is loss of habitat due to climate change. Related threats are human contact and industrial development. If people don't make changes quickly, polar bears may disappear.
Okay, so what we'll do is we will play the file one more time. And obviously, if you missed any of those answers, you can fill them in. But also, we need to look at part 6. And that is one of the kind of more traditional fill-in-the-blank questions. So there's a missing word or words, and we need to fill them in. Okay, so we'll listen to it one more time, and then we're going to check the answers to part 5 and part 6. Here we go.
1.2.
Hello, and thank you all for coming. I know that you're all busy students, and I appreciate that you're here today. So, what do you think of when you hear the words climate change? You probably think about warmer temperatures, floods, droughts, huge storms, and maybe polar bears. That's what I'm going to talk about today. The polar bear and the human threats to this beautiful, powerful, majestic animal. It's widely known that polar bears are now an endangered species. There are only about 26,000 polar bears in the world today, and it's believed that most of them will be gone by 2050 if nothing changes. There are several threats to polar bears. The biggest threat is the loss of sea ice habitat. Climate change damages the sea ice which polar bears depend on for survival. The disappearing ice has several negative effects. For example, polar bears have problems searching for seals, their main source of food. Polar bears need to stand on ice to hunt for seals. So when there isn't enough ice, the bears become hungry. A second threat is contact between humans and polar bears. When the sea ice melts, polar bears have to spend more time on land. When polar bears go near towns, people sometimes kill the bears to protect themselves. A third human threat to polar bears is industrial development, such as oil production and shipping. As the ice disappears, the ocean is growing. This means more oil production in the Arctic and an increased threat of oil spills. Contact with oil will kill polar bears. And the oil ships are also dangerous to polar bears. However, there is good news. It may not be too late to save the polar bear. Here's what people are already doing. First, Arctic communities are trying to reduce contact between humans and polar bears. More lights in public places, electric fences, and warning plans when bears enter towns all help to protect both polar bears and humans. Second, governments have made laws which limit the amount of oil production in the Arctic. And environmental groups are creating plans to make Arctic shipping safer. Third, people are trying to stop climate change. And you can too. To help save polar bears, you should use less electricity and petrol. And you could tell government leaders your opinion about climate change. It might also be a good idea to get involved with organizations which are working to save polar bears. So, to summarize, the main threat to polar bears is loss of habitat due to climate change. Related threats are human contact and industrial development. If people don't make changes quickly, polar bears may disappear.
Okay. Yep. Save the polar bear. Okay, everybody. So let's now just check the answers. Okay, so again, we're on page 26 and we are doing part 5 and part 6. I think what I'll do though, actually, is I'll open a blank Word file and I'll write the answers. That way it will be easier for you to check them. So page 26, part 5. All right, so first of all then, we're filling in the table. The human threats to polar bears. And number 1, the book already completed it. It is loss of sea ice habitat. So what is number 2? The answer is contact between humans and polar bears. If you have something similar to this, you got it correct. If you did not, well, put the correct answer there now. Number 3, what is the other threat? I've made it short. Industrial development. Okay, on the right side, what people are doing to help the polar bears. Number 4, the first one, reduce contact between humans and polar bears. So it's basically the opposite of number 2. Number 5, another way they're trying to help the polar bears is making laws which limit oil production. And the last one, stop climate change. Okay, so if you want to listen again to the audio file, you can just go back in this video to the part where the audio file is. Let's move on. Part 6. So we're filling in the missing information, the missing words. There are only about 26,000 polar bears left in the wild. Number 2, most polar bears will probably be gone by, right, we need to have a date, 2050, not 15, obviously, because that's in the past, 2050. Number 3, the disappearing ice has several negative effects. Number 4, when polar bears go near towns. Number 5 is groups are creating plans to make Arctic shipping safer. And the last one, to help save polar bears, you should use less electricity and petrol. You guys know what petrol is? Right. This textbook is British English. So petrol it's what we call gasoline. So petrol is petroleum. And in American English, they would say gasoline. It's what you put in the car or in vehicles. Okay, so petrol. Right, let's go back to the textbook now. Yeah, so that is the listening section. And when we're in the classroom, we will do one of the listening sections for each unit, usually. After that, we will do speaking practice. But because this is a video lecture, obviously, it's pretty much impossible to do speaking practice. So what we're going to have to do just for this unit is concentrate on the language development pages. That is grammar, vocabulary. Not always the most interesting, but useful and helpful. Okay, so what we'll do first is we'll go back. Remember I said that I wanted to look at the language development from listening 1. So it's page 22 and 23. Okay, page 22, word families. Now this is quite useful because a lot of students, they get a little bit confused and use the wrong form of the word. That is, they want to use an adjective, but they use a verb, or the other way around. So it's good to study nouns, verbs, adjectives, adverbs of the same word. Now, I'm not going to go through all of this because it'll take too long. But just have a look at the table there. Maybe we can do 1 or 2 in this video. So at the top, the first word is the noun abandonment. Abandonment. So what is the verb? It's always good to just say to. When we use a verb, it's usually to. So it would be abandon, to abandon. So it's the same word without the ment, abandon. And then what would be the adjective of that word? Let me just check my notes here. But abandoned, like an abandoned animal. So it's abandon with ed, abandoned. There is no adverb for this word. Next row, we have the verb abuse, and we have the adverb abusively. So what is the noun of abuse? Well, it's the same, abuse. Like we saw earlier, animal abuse. So the noun is abuse, and the verb is abuse. Different pronunciation, abuse. What about the adjective? Well, that's when you use IVE, so abusive. ABUSIVE, abusive. The next row, the book does it all for us. Analysis, and analyze, analytical, analytically. Right, I'll just do one more from this table. Communication. What is the verb? To communicate. What is the adjective? Communicative. And then the adverb, you just add ly, communicatively. All right, so you could fill in the rest of this table if you have the desire and motivation. Let's have a look at part 2, and we can fill in the missing words. All right, so we're going to put the correct form of the words in the brackets. That's the parentheses. So number 1, analyze, and we change it to analysis, the analysis of the blood sample. So we change it from the verb to the noun. 2, we need to use the word survive. Domesticated animals may find it very hard to, it's the same, to survive in the wild. Number 3, abandon. Owners sometimes, same again, abandon their animals on the street when they can no longer care for them. So it's the same. Number 4, she is a strong, we need to change it, supporter. She is a strong supporter of animal rights. Adjective, supporter. Sorry, that was the noun, a supporter. Number 5, using environmentally. So that's the adverb, using environmentally damaging chemicals on farms can endanger wild animals. Environmentally. There's a few more on the next page. Some scientists have explored how birds communicate with each other. So it's the same, communicate. 7, she has had a lot of involvement with animal rights. Many people are very protective towards animals. I listened to a debate, and many people who are abusive to animals. Okay, so that's about word families. Next part, modals for obligation, prohibition, and advice. We're going to study this. So let's have a look. Right, I'm going to read the grammar box. This is going to give us the grammar information. Right, so when you want to talk about obligation, use have to, have got to, need to, or must. And those words describe obligation. Now, obligation means you have to do something. It is not a choice. It is an obligation, so you must do it. And you can see the examples there. Look, animals have to find food, water, and a safe place to live in order to survive. If they don't do it, they die. So it's an obligation. You can turn it into a negative. This is the next part. You can use don't have to or don't need to if you want to say that something is not an obligation. You don't have to feed the chickens. I've already fed them. Okay, so you don't have to do something. Next one, use mustn't, which is must not, to say that something is prohibited or not allowed. Visitors to the zoo mustn't touch the animals. Must not becomes mustn't. Visitors to the zoo mustn't touch the animals. Next one is about giving advice. You can use should or ought to if you want to give strong advice, advice that you are sure about. You should give money to animal rights organizations. Now, if you want to give advice that is less strong, less sure, you could use might or could. And in this case, they use might it's a longer expression. It might be a good idea. It might be a good idea to volunteer at the animal shelter, giving advice. It might be a good idea too. Or you could say you could volunteer at the animal shelter. Right, let's have a quick look at the questions underneath part 3. Look at the sentences and the underlined modals. What does each sentence express? Write O for obligation, P for prohibition, or A for advice. Okay, everybody, pause the video, complete the questions. When you are ready, start the video again. Here we go. Number 1, you have to love animals to be a vet. So have to is what? It is obligation. Oh. You mustn't give human food to animals. What is mustn't? Prohibition. P. Prohibition means not allowed. If you want to work with animals, you could become a vet. Advice. Number 4, we must do more as a society to prevent animal cruelty. That is an obligation. O. 5, what courses do you need to complete to get a veterinary degree? Veterinary means vet. Need to is obligation. O. Number 6, you ought to visit the San Diego Zoo. It has some great animals. Ought to. Advice. A. We should be kind to animals. That is advice. A. It might be a good idea to help out on a farm. Number 8 is A. Okay, so obligation, prohibition, advice. This is one of the grammar sections for Unit 1. Okay, let's keep going. So we're going now past listening to. Signposting language, you can see that there, page 27. We're going to talk about that in a minute. That comes up again shortly. Right, let's keep going. We're going to skip through these pages. This is where it gives you some advice about making a presentation or a speech. Okay, let's have a look at this section here. Signposting language. When you are giving a speech or a presentation, it is a very good idea to use what we call signposting language. And I think you're already familiar with this. Actually, we also use it in the essay, in the writing APE1. So it's language like this. When you want to introduce the first point, you say first or first of all. If you want to add another idea, you can use language like furthermore, second, another point is, or finally. And if you want to sum up in a conclusion, to sum up, to summarize, in conclusion, in short. So this is what we call signposting language. Page 33, it gives you some language. If you want to give examples, and you don't just always have to say, for example, you could also use language like this. For instance, It's the same meaning as for example, or you could say such as. So look at part 3, number 1. I think that zoos are sometimes good for animals. For example, and then we give an example. So I think that zoos are sometimes good for animals. For example, they provide the animals with regular food. Number 2, you can see many exotic animals in zoos, such as lizards, snakes, tropical birds, etc. Number 3, animals are sometimes unhappy in zoos. For instance, when they are in a very small cage. All right, so the point is, don't always use the same language. I think we can skip the next part. Okay, I'm going to go to the next slide, which is basically wrapping up the unit. So this is like a little review. And you can also see there at the top of page, what is that? Is that 34? Yeah. This is the speaking task question. I changed it a little bit. Give a speech about human threats to an endangered species. So the girl, she talked about polar bears. If you want to do this one in your speaking task, well, maybe you could use her speech to help you. But you can't do polar bears. You would have to choose a different animal, a different species. Okay, before we finish this video, I'm just going to show you a couple of worksheet files. Okay, so this is a worksheet file. It's not going to be homework or an assignment. It's too early in the semester for that. So we'll just have a look at it together. So this is practicing modals for obligation, prohibition, and advice. Directions. Write your own example sentences using the target language. So examples are in red. So look at number 1. We're going to use need to, right? That's the target language, need to. And here's an example. I need to extend my working visa. That is an obligation. It's not a choice. If I don't do it, I'm in trouble. So maybe I would say to the students, you need to, remember I talked about if you are absent, you have to submit the official evidence. This is an obligation. If you are absent from the class, you need to submit the evidence of your absence. Okay, must is also obligation. My example here, people must continue social distancing due to the coronavirus. Let's do a different one, must. I'll use it about students again. Well, actually, we must wear the mask in the classroom still. We must wear a mask in the classroom. Number 3, we're going to practice using don't have to. So that is not an obligation. Okay, so let's do it about week 2. You don't have to come to the classroom in week 2 because we're using a video lesson. Number 4 is prohibition. That means you're not allowed to do something. You mustn't. I'm trying to give examples for students. You mustn't submit work that is copied from somebody else. That is called plagiarism. You mustn't do that. You mustn't submit work that is copied from somebody else. Right, 5 and 6 is about giving advice. We're going to use should, and it might be a good idea. you should review our classes and the textbook after the lesson. That is good advice. That is strong advice. You should review the textbook after the lesson. Okay, less strong advice. It might be a good idea. It might be a good idea to translate any words that you do not understand. So those are giving advice. Right, this video is almost finished, but we're just going to have a look at the signposting worksheet. I used this in the APE1 class. So if you were my student, this could be familiar to you. Directions: fill in the blanks using the following signposting words expressions. Some of them are repeated. So first, for example, in conclusion, therefore, there are 3 therefores. Next, in my opinion, 2 of those. However, it's a fact that, finally, according to, actually, sorry, there are 4 therefores. Right, so this is a very basic script about Starbucks coffee. A lot of my examples are about Starbucks. Introduction: do you agree that Starbucks is the best coffee? I don't think that Starbucks is the best coffee. There are 3 good reasons to support this view. It's too expensive, there are many other choices, and its taste is too strong. Right, so the missing blanks, obviously this is where we need to put the signposting language. Let's just do it together. So A, blank, Starbucks coffee is too expensive. Right, now I think A is, it's always a pretty obvious. A is the first one, so what do you think it is? Yes, it is first. First, Starbucks coffee is too expensive. Now then, B is giving supporting evidence. So we need to have something like, for example. So let's put that in B. For example, when I buy an iced Americano from Starbucks, it costs 4,601. All right, C. This is when you're showing contrast. So we're going to use however. However, if I make my own coffee, it only costs about 501. So showing contrast. Excuse me, everybody. I'm still sniffling a little bit here with a cold. D is the last part of the body 1. So we're going to go with therefore, Starbucks coffee is too expensive. Next section is the body 2. What do you think we're going to go for? Something like second, but we don't have second, so we're going to go with next. Signposting language. This is what this is. Next, there are many other coffee shops to choose from. Right, so it's probably going to be something like, for example, but we don't have that. So it's a fact that. It's a fact that in Korea, there are many large name brand coffee shops and smaller independent coffee shops. Right, the next part is like an example. So we're going to go with, where is it? In my opinion, the smaller independent coffee shops like Standing Coffee have the best coffee. Therefore, there are other coffee shops to choose from. Body 3, I. First part. Right, we used first, we used next. So this is the last body. So maybe we're going to go with finally. Starbucks coffee taste is too strong. According to. According to my friends, family, and I, Starbucks coffee has a very bitter taste compared to other coffee shops. In my opinion, Starbucks coffee over roasts their coffee beans, and this creates an unpleasant taste, unpleasant flavor. Therefore, Starbucks taste is too strong. Right, in the conclusion section, well, that's a pretty big hint, isn't it? What do you think comes next? Yes, in conclusion. In conclusion, I believe Starbucks is not the best coffee. This is now review. It's too expensive. There are many other coffee shops and its taste is too strong. So what are we going to put last? It's the final therefore. When I want to enjoy a delicious coffee, I choose a different coffee shop than Starbucks. All right, so this is about signposting. And I went through this very quickly because I don't want this video to be too long. Okay, everybody, so that is the end of this video. That is teaching Unit 1, Animals. Don't forget to review, maybe re-watch the video, recheck your book. After the Chuseok break, when we are all back together in the classroom for week 3, we will study Unit 2, which is about the environment. Okay, so I look forward to seeing you all then, and let's end the video.